Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the East Regional Park District Board of Directors regular board session. And today is 11/16/2021, and it is at 1:38. And I apologize for the late start. We had some technical issues that we eventually got around, but us to be a little bit late. So with that apology, I would like to ask Director Wieskamp to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. And then I'm going to ask Director Echols to do the acknowledgement.
Sure. Thank you, President Rosario. I would like to acknowledge the traditional lands of the. Sorry, I thought we were still. I apologize. I thought we were still doing the Zoom.
Okay, my apologies. I thought I was connected. Anyway, I wanted to acknowledge the Native peoples who have nurtured and cared for the land that we sit on for many years, and in particular, in Ward 1, which I represent, the Weekman people and Kenyan people who both speak own languages, and this land was never fully ceded, lawfully ceded. And will continue to care and nurture these lands for half centuries and continue to do so. And I particularly want to acknowledge the Sorority Land Trust, which is a woman-led land trust based here in Central Bay that facilitates the return of indigenous land to indigenous people. And I feel very fortunate that in Ward 1, these women are working in the guild track to collaborate with various people to grow vegetables and other plants and to both fill the need of food, but also to nurture and care for the land. So I just wanted to add that to my acknowledgement today. Thank you.
And then, any board directors have anything to add to the agenda? Seeing none, I would seek a motion to approve. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Lane and second by Director Wieskamp. Madam Clerk, can you please take the roll call?
Ms. President Rosario, Director Lane. Here. Director Coffey.
Here.
Director Waspy.
Here.
Director Echols. Here. Director Wieskamp. Here. Director Corbett.
Here.
President Rosario.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also, we hear public comments, and I would like to, let people know how they can participate in this meeting.
Yes, President Rosario, just a reminder, I did not do a total roll call.
Okay.
So let me do that. I'm going to go back and start over. The clerk will be doing the roll call of the board meeting today. Director Coffey.
I'm here.
Director Coffey, yeah. Director Lane. Here. Director Waspy. Here. Director Echols. Here. Director Wieskamp. Here. Director Corbett.
Here.
President Rosario.
Here.
Staff President General Manager Landry. Here. Deputy General Manager Alvarez. Here. District Council Victor. CFO AGM Arthur. AGM Chief Chivalro. AGM Cashman. Here. AGM Johnson. Here. AGM O'Connor.
Here.
Adrian Cook. Here. Eric Bueller, Chief of Legislative and Government Affairs.
Today's meeting is held pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 361. Board members and staff may participate via phone or video conferencing. This meeting is a hybrid with in-person attendance with board members, designated staff, and members of the public. We are also providing live audio and streaming, and have provided the public the opportunity to submit written comments and call into public comments as well for an item on staff report. And clerk will let you know how to call in and leave a voice message. That's what you're.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Coffey, could you put your computer on mute? Thank you very much. Yes, President Rosario, you can send an email to library@ebparks.org. You can call via and leave a voicemail at 510-544-2016, or you can simply join the meeting and leave a public comment. Thank you. And just let me just add one more thing, public comments will not be read at the meeting, but included in the final board document. All comments and letters received before the 3 p.m. deadline yesterday have been distributed to the board and will not be read at this meeting. Thank you.
So, any public comments?
Yes, President. Yes, President Rosario, we do have several public comments. The first one is going to be Kelly Avery, and you have 3 minutes, sir. You can unmute your video or unstop your video. Kelly Avery. Okay, Kelly, I see that you're here. Give me one more chance and then I'll come back to you. Okay, let's move on. Next speaker I have is Daniel Lee.
Hi, I'm here.
You have 3 minutes, Mr. Lee.
Okay, my name is Daniel Lee and I live in El Cerrito. I've been mountain biking in Tilden and Wildcat for many years. My son is 11 years old and he started mountain biking several years ago. Last year, my son joined the Wildcat Composite Junior Mountain Biking Team, which was formerly called the El Cerrito Mountain Biking Team. He really enjoys using the trails in Tilden and Wildcat and rides there about 2 to 3 times a week. Over the past few years, mountain biking has really exploded in popularity. Our team has increased from about 20 or 30 riders to now about 100. All of these riders are from our community and are looking for increased access to trails that is safe and respectful to other trail users. I'd like to make a few points on access. There are many trails in Wildcat and Tilden that are wide, large fire roads that have no bikes signs. This includes a wide fire road called Laurel Canyon, which is a central trail in Tilden that connects to many other trails. There's also a large and wide paved road that connects Wildcat to Tilden called Wildcat Creek Trail that is off limits to bikes. This paved road is not only wide, but it's also flat. It's safe to share with other users, so it's unclear why a central connecting road like this is off limits to bike riders. Furthermore, many mountain bike riders enjoy riding on narrower trails called single track trails. There's quite a number of single track trails in Tilden, but all of them are designated for hikers only and are off limits to bikes. There are other parks in the area like Crockett and China Camp that have single track for both hikers and bike riders, and they've been shared safely for many years. My request today is for the board to consider increasing access for bikers in Tilden and Wildcat on large connecting fire roads such as Laurel Canyon and Wildcat Creek Trail. I would also like to request to increase access and designate a few single track trails to include bikers. Another idea is to allow the creation of a new single track trail in Wildcat that is designated specifically for mountain bike use. That's all I have, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Sorry about that. Can you turn that down? Thank you, Mr. Lee. Our next speaker we have is Royal Hardigan.
Track trails to include bikers. Another idea is to allow the creation of a new single track trail
Okay,
designated specifically for
Kelly
mountain
Abram, are you listening to the live stream?
consideration.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. You're gonna need to turn that down. So you have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, right. The City Council of Fremont staged 3 hours of angry rants last week and voted not to collaborate with the district. It confirms what we've been saying all along, that the council doesn't want to collaborate. It's ironic that so many council members have Mission Peak on their Zoom backgrounds, and the city logo features a silhouette of the mountain. The city manager wrote a letter in 2020 demanding the park close 900 acres near the main entrance that included, quote, the trail, staging area, and parking lot, end quote. Closing the street was just a means to that end. The city knew the closure, now knows the closure was shameful, and it's now in denial. Councilmember Casson said we had the authority to do the street closure. Ms. Shackelford, the city manager, says we did not close the park. We closed the street, not the park. And I just wanted to be absolutely clear on that. Ms. Lacey, deputy city attorney, says in May of 2020, again, that wasn't us closing the park. As the city manager said, that was us closing the street. Mayor May said we did not close down the park. What we did is we decided to close down the street, end quote. These lies are absurd. As Voltaire said, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And closing the park during a pandemic was atrocious for public health. City is now hiding behind legal mumbo jumbo, and they've desecrated the concept of healthy parks, healthy people. City Council was asking to shorten the lease from 25 to 5 years so they can micromanage the park through never-ending negotiations. They want to discourage capital improvements at the main entrance that's used by 3/4 of the visitors. This district must stand fast, must uphold its values, must carry out its mission of providing access for all. We'll all just have to wait and see if the city comes to its senses and stops waging war on its top-ranked regional park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abram. I don't see the other gentleman, Curtis Cooper. And then I also have Royal Hardigan. Is there anyone else interested in just public comment? Is there anybody else on the line that's interested in the public comment? Okay, President Brazil.
President Brazil, I may feel important to speak in the mic. There's some sound issues on YouTube.
Thank you. Thank you. Beth, we have business before the board. Calendar, one questions before the members.
No, President Brazil, all the questions were answered that I received.
So, seeing no discussion on the consent calendar, motion is in order.
President Brazil, we do have some speakers on item, I'm sorry, item exoneration of Port Chicago. Yeah. So that would be item D. And first speaker I see is Brian McDaniel.
I'm here.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, ma'am.
I just wanted to support the idea of the resolution for exonerating the men of Port Chicago, and just wanted to thank you for your interest and your continued support in that way. And I'm just grateful. So I really didn't have 3 minutes. I just wanted to give you a big shout out to say thank you for all the support and for the Port Chicago Sailors. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe I see Yuli Padmore.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yes, I, of course, just wanted to show up and show my appreciation for the board. This is something that I know that we have supported for many years. And so I'm very grateful for this continued effort. Want to acknowledge the board and show my appreciation. This story means so much to so many people, veterans, African-American, Black community. And so thank you so much. Really appreciate this effort. And I think, you know, if we continue down this path, we won't have to start knocking the doors down. You know, I think it's time for action. And I think the board is awesome for this. So thank you. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak on this item?
I do have
I see Sabrina Canal. Are you speaking on this item? No? Okay, I have a public comment. My name is Yolanda Burial Knight, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I went back to the original resolution, and I just pulled out a couple of items. Whereas the 50 who refused to return to loading operations were subjected to the largest mass mutiny trial in naval history, which resulted on October the 24th, 1944, in a conviction on the charge of mutiny and a sentence of up to 15 years imprisonment. Whereas after appeals and widespread protests in January 1946, which included the participation of future Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall and former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, the Port Chicago men were released from prison, but their convictions remained on their records. Whereas the unfairness of the Port Chicago mutiny prosecution would ultimately serve as one of the catalysts for the 1948 executive order requiring desegregation of the armed services. Whereas the Committee on Natural Resources of the House of Representatives conducted hearings on the Port Chicago case in 1993 and in 1994. Whereas in 1999, a pardon was granted to one of the few surviving members of the Port Chicago 50, Freddie Meeks, by President William Clinton, following a thorough review of the case. Whereas on July 17, 2021, the nation will mark the 17th anniversary of the Port Chicago disaster, and the unjust and racially motivated convictions remain on the records of the Port Chicago 15. It has been 77 years. These young men and boys deserve exoneration. They enlisted to serve our country out of a duty, an honor to serve their country. We can't keep waiting. We can't keep giving their service. We can't keep giving. Their service deserves to be recognized and their legacy repaired. Thank you, board members, for considering this resolution.
And I also see, two other hands, Victoria Adams and Chanel Scales Preston. You see that?
Hi, are you asking me to go now, speak now?
Chanel, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Chanel Scales Preston, and I am the District Director for Congressman Mark DeSaulnier. And I just want to thank the board, thank the Friends of Port Chicago. I see Reverend Diana here and the East Bay Regional Park District for your support with the Congressman's resolution on the exoneration of the Port Chicago 50. You know, as we know, by having this type of resolution, if we're able to bring this forward, we're bringing justice to the sailors and recognizing their courage, as well as honoring their service and sacrifice of the victims of this disaster. And also really looking at how we fight to continue to make change for racial justice. And that change requires all of us to confront, past chapters and righting the historical wrongs. So I really just thank you all again for bringing this forward. And I'll let the congressman know he's in DC, so he wasn't able to hop on today, but thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Victoria Adams.
Well, good afternoon. And hello to the board president and board members. And as you said, my name is Victoria Adams, and I'm president of the East County branch of the NAACP. And just wanted to, again, like all the others, say thank you for bringing this resolution forward, and to the congressman as well. And to let you know, just a little background, that the East County branch, we are in full support of this resolution, HCON Res 40, the exoneration of the Port Chicago 50. And as you may or may not know, we, the East County branch, has also previously submitted a resolution in support of exonerating the Port Chicago 50. We did that quite a few years ago, a while ago, and we're still in there fighting the good fight. And we do that because our community has always, over the years, voiced their opinion regarding the acts of these men. And that is that was not a crime, but more of an act of bravery, as they were victims of their victims of a racially charged time. So with that being said, just want you to know that exonerating these soldiers, these sailors, and placing a letter in each of their files should and must be done in order to effect restorative justice and to make each of these men and their families who have suffered whole. So with that, I say again, thank you to the congressman, and thank you for supporting this effort.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. We also just received a letter from Citizens for Historical Equity supporting this resolution. And I will give that to you guys, to the board after the meeting. That's all the public speakers. Any other public comments on public comment? Consent calendar? Okay. Thank you very much. Motion is in order to approve. After that, recommend.
I just wanted to thank Reverend Diana and all of you for speaking on behalf of this and for encouraging us to pursue this resolution. But I also want to say a special thanks to Congressman Mark DeSaulnier, who for many years has been pursuing this issue. And say that for those of you who haven't read the information on the resolution, there is an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act with regard to this exoneration. And so this year, after many years of effort, I think we are feeling very optimistic about the fact that this will indeed come to pass. So thank you all for your support, and in particular, Mr. DeSaulnier.
Seconded by Mr. Wieskamp. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. President, Director Coffey,
Aye.
Director Rossi, Director Lane,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp, aye. President Rosario, aye. And I believe Director, Director Corbett.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Director Eccles. I know you had the motion. Unanimous for this consent calendar.
That brings us to item 2, acquisition, storage, and development division. And 2A is authorization to enter into an option, purchase and sale agreement, exercise purchase option, and transfer appropriate funds to acquire 80.45 acres of real property from Civic Rancho Meadows LLC, Deer Valley Regional Park.
Good afternoon, President Rosario, members of the board. Mike Reeves, Chief of Land Acquisition. Would you pull this presentation up on the screen? The Civic Rancho Meadows property is an 80-acre property located in the middle of Deer Valley in eastern Ossipon County. And the image you're seeing here shows the farmstead of the property in the foreground. And then this is looking southeasterly down the valley. And so this is a good kind of perspective, an overview of the property. So this map provides a regional perspective of the location of the property. You see the lands acquired by the Park District as part of the future Deer Valley Regional Park surrounding the property. You have Black Diamond Mines Regional Preserve, Clayton Ranch, and then to the north on the top of the map, you see the environs of Antioch. So this property is located in the unincorporated part of the county outside of the Antioch city limits. And then to the east and the lower right of the map, you see the future Market Street State Park. And what else? Deer Valley Road is on the right side of the map going north to south. And you see Chadbourne Road there, which is the access into the property into Deer Valley, coming off of Deer Valley Road. Zooming in a bit, the property is located, as I said, in Deer Valley. It's the middle of three valleys that comprise the area of interest for the Park District in protecting this vicinity. All of them constituting, again, the future Deer Valley Regional Park. And so north to south, you have Horse Valley, which is perhaps best kind of identified by Empire Mine Road that you see there on the map. And then you have Deer Valley in the middle, and again, that's Chadbourne Road that lets into Deer Valley. And then south of that, we have Briones Valley. The terminus of the public road right-of-way of Chadbourne Road is at the property boundary. It's important because of the opportunity that this acquisition presents. Zooming in further still, so this is a close-up aerial map of the property, and you see the farmstead there in the upper right corner. It includes about 4 acres of olive orchard that was planted in 2012, but it has since been allowed to go out. Most of the property is grasslands, rolling oak woodlands towards the south of the property, and most of this is in grazing currently. You can just barely see that in the upper right corner of this map, this image, the bit of green there on the north side of Chadbourne Road. The green is all designates, of course, Park District land. But that upper right corner there is where there exists a ranch compound, which is part of the Roddy Ranch range that was purchased by the Park District back in 2014. So that ranch compound also figures into the opportunity for this acquisition to provide. I can speak more on that in a little bit. So the time that the Park District staff was entering into negotiations with the property owner for the potential purchase, the owner had submitted an application to the county to subdivide the 80 acres into 4 separate 20-acre rural ranchette lots. And that application was reviewed by the county zoning administrator, and in October, that was approved. I should say that the first step of that was approved. The tentative parcel map was approved for the site. But this is important that the approval by the zoning administrator was conditioned upon expressly that the property be sold to the park district at terms that were mutually agreeable between the owner and the park district. And you can see before I move from this image, you can see what that would do where there would be 4 ranchette homes developed on that site. It would be in the middle of an area that the park district has worked in conjunction with our partnership with the East Contra Costa County Habitat Conservancy over a period of the last 12 years. We've been working to preserve the open space landscapes of the 3 valleys, horse, deer especially, and rhinos through the acquisition of now standing at 3,625 acres of open space at a cost of over $27 million. So this property is part of that donut hole, if you will, of private land. It's a private inholding surrounded by those thousands of acres of publicly protected open space. So a very critical puzzle piece in our efforts to protect Deer Valley in particular. So we're going to move on to some photos. And orient folks, we're going to start at the bottom of Deer Valley, just off of Deer Valley Road. And this is the beginning of Chadbourne Road. So this is looking northwesterly. And you can see in the background there, in the distance, that's the Roddy Home Ranch, which is the first of the ranch compounds located in the valley as you again exit from Deer Valley Road and you head into the valley. So you can see that. We're going to now have an overview look of the Roddy Home Ranch, which was acquired by the district a few years back. And Jack and Donna Roddy have been partnering with the Park District since 2012 on their legacy program as much as the Park Districts to see their ranch preserved in its entirety. So we're going to move a little further up Chadbourne Road. And now we get to that compound that is also part of the Roddy Ranch. And it's served before as, and today still, as a caretaker compound residence for the ranch. And this is located again at the terminus of the public right-of-way of Chadbourne Road. And the Park District staff envisions that this compound will eventually serve as a park headquarters, a park corporation yard and office. The house here in the middle is identified as being suitable to serve as that office. So we're just going to go kind of around the corner from this compound. And here we are at the terminus of Chadbourne Road, the public right-of-way of Chadbourne Road. And you have on the right, on the left, you have the subject property. And you can see some of those olive trees that were planted. And then on the right, you have the other 160 acres that comprises the balance of that donut hole that I'm referring to as the private inholding that's surrounded by protected parkland. That incidentally, that the property on the right does not have any. It had a historic ranch compound, but that's long since vacant, and the grove there has not been managed for several decades, and it's primarily just grazing land. This is again standing at that the end of Chadbourne Road, the public part of Chadbourne Road. Now we're pivoting and looking out to the south, and on the left, the fields there, that is Park District land. On the right is the subject property. And that fence line will extend all the way to the toe of the hills you see there in the background. again, 80 acres, but it actually has a lot of variety in terms of topography and vegetation on that. So now we're standing on the property, and again, we're looking southeasterly down Deer Valley Road, and the farmstead for the property is there in the middle, and the kind of the tops of taller trees. You can see some of the buildings there to the left. In the left center of the image, that's the ranch compound that's on Park District land there at the end of Chadbourne Road. And between these two compounds, you have the possibility to develop a very complete future corporation yard and park office for Deer Valley for the regional park. To the right rear of the image, you see the trees there at the base of the valley, and that again, we're looking at the Rodney Home Ranch. So here you're looking at probably 2/3 of the entire valley from this vantage, and within that area of thousands of acres, you have these three ranch compounds. You have the Rodney Home Ranch there in the distance. You have the ranch compound that's part of the Rodney Ranch, again, Park District owned, that's on the left side, left center there, and then you have the subject ranch compound here. So now we're standing at the same hill within the property, and we pivoted our view to the northwest, looking up the valley. And Chadbourne Road it runs, you can see the fallowed orchard trees on the adjacent 160-acre property. And that line there is, along that line is Chadbourne Road. You kind of see that traveling north and west across this image. That's also the property boundary for the subject property. And that property boundary goes as far as that hill and kind of the left center distant with the copse of trees there. And you can there make out the fence line to the left of that copse of trees, and that would be the western boundary of the property. This is standing on Park District land on the southern boundary of the property, and you can see the fence line there at the bottom of the image. And then looking straight across into the center, a little bit distant, you see the house of the property, and then the rest of the compound there. And it's just looking generally northward. And so the property does include a good area of woodlands on the lower foothills to lead up to that ridge line. This is at the southwest corner of the property, and at the time that the current owner was applying to the county for the subdivision, they were also testing out water supply for that proposed subdivision. So there was a series of exploratory wells that were sunk. This is the one that was the most promising. 750 feet was the depth of this. And Deer Valley has the challenges that a lot of East County open space and grazing lands has, which is a very spotty water access. So to find water through sinking the well is a hit and miss proposition. So they did get to this depth of 750 feet, and that proved out to be an artesian well, which means in essence that there is no pump required, and there's still a flow of water that comes out of this well. And this is critical. Having a new source of water for livestock raising anywhere in our parklands is a real boon. So this is This is something that comes to us by dint of the aborted process of proposed subdivision of the property. And this is looking generally northerly, and everything you see to that first bunch of trees there in the distance is part of the property. This is a close-up of the olives that were planted in 2011 and were basically abandoned in 2016 when the house was last occupied by the previous owner. This is the house, and my model for a few of these photos was the caretaker that is now out there at the ranch compound at the end of the road at the park district owns. That was Jack and Donna Roddy's caretaker, and so we kept him and his family on, and that's one of the dogs, friendly one. About approximately 3,000 square foot house, including the two-car garage. The house was built in 2012, so a fairly recent construction. However, it was vacated in 2016 and sat vacant since. And there is some work to be done to bring the house up to code. This is a couple views of the inside of the house, the living area, and kitchen. There was also two shop buildings located on the property, directly across from the house. They're in recent vintage and in good repair. Inside of the two shop buildings, the one has a built-in office space there. Both of them have a bathroom facility. So the considerations for this acquisition opportunity are several. First and foremost, it would remove an 80-acre private inholding that's surrounded again by thousands of acres of open space land that has been acquired at considerable cost over the last dozen years or more. And in that sense, it does protect that investment in preserving Deer Valley. It would also secure road access to the upper reaches of the valley. So I mentioned that the public right-of-way of Chadbourne Road terminates at the property line. We own the other side of the property, northwesterly, which is a continuation of Chadbourne Road further up the valley. But we have not perfected access across this subject property along Chadbourne Road. So with this acquisition, we would secure those access rights, and it would be that break. And so that holds potential not only to continue to use that road to access the balance of Roddy Ranch and to maintain and operate those ranch lands, but also the possible creation of public trail access up Chadbourne Road if that's identified as part of the planning process for developing the park. The water supply, again, this offers a new year-round source for livestock water, not seasonal, but year-round. So I think that will figure hugely into our current and operations for vegetation management within Deer Valley and the ability for that effort. And then lastly, the farm compound as part of just adjacent to our existing ranch compound there at the end of Chadbourne Road, that can serve as part of a larger park office corporation yard. The residents would certainly be suitable as staff residents in the future, pending bringing the residents up to code. So today's acquisition opportunity includes a funding appropriation request. Staff is recommending tapping a total of 4 different sources of funding. So we really had to mix and match the funds to cobble together the cost of this project. And that's because the first item you see there, which is Measure WW designated acquisitions, a whopping $30,459. That is what remains in the Park District's allocation account, the Measure WW allocation for the Deer Valley area. And that's a good sign because it's a demonstration of how the Park District has worked to utilize those Measure WW funds for Deer Valley to great effect to acquire and protect all that thousands of acres that has been mentioned previously. So this is what's left in that account. That has us then turning to other sources as more specifically detailed in the staff report. So for a total appropriation request of $1,713,900. And that would be used for the purchase price of the property, which is $1.5 million. And then safety and security funds primarily directed towards addressing the repairs needed to the residents to work towards the process of bringing it up to code so that it could be utilized as a staff residence. And then installing additional fencing to fold the property into the surrounding grazing program and some recycling. So with that, I'll open it to any questions by the board.
Thank you. Great presentation. I'm going to start with Director Coffey, since it's in your award.
Oh, thank you, President Rosario. Can you hear me, Dee?
Yes.
Oh, terrific. I just want to congratulate Mike and his team and express appreciation for the efforts they put in. And as a matter of fact, his predecessors, the district has been pursuing this parcel for a number of years through a couple of different owners. And the prospect of having it land into a subdivided set of ranchettes was not something we of course looked forward to, in that it was a full in-holding part of a large donut hole, as it were, in the Deer Valley there. So I wholeheartedly support the resolution approving the acquisition, and again, appreciate the fact that this checks a lot of boxes on the Park District's acquisition list, as Mike just described. Thank you.
Are you ready to make a motion, Director Coffey?
If there's no other board discussion, sure.
We have one more question, Director Lane.
Well, I am wondering when these photographs were taken. Just recently, because it's very green.
Yes, Director Lane, just this last weekend, realizing that there have been some recent rains, and all the photographs we had before then were very brown. So it's an opportunity to get out there and really walk the entire property with some fitness photos.
Okay, well, I appreciate the fact that you did that. Although, of course, gold is nice too. And I want to just thank you for your work on this. I think we have had some experiences where people have developed in holdings, which make the park experience in larger parks not as wonderful as it might be for visitors. So I appreciate the fact that we are able to purchase this, but I'm wondering if, because of the preliminary approvals of those parcels, does that mean that the property costs more?
Director Lee, that's an excellent question, and no, the agreement reached with the owner and Park District staff was to purchase the price at the Park District appraised fair market value in its as is condition, which is 180-acre parcel with the house on it, and not the hypothetical, if you will, for the 4-lot Rural Ranchette subdivision. So that was put into the agreement. And the other thing is, I think it's important to note, this does not set a precedent. The county's approval by the zoning administrator's approval of the tentative parcel map is the first step, but by no means gets the owner to a final approved subdivision that can be developed. So, and again, with that key condition of the approval by the county that the property be sold to the Park District. So that's the other important part of the deal that was worked out.
Motion is on. Director Coffey, would you like to make the motion to approve?
All right, if the time's appropriate, thank you, President Rosario. I move that the resolution authorizing the purchase option and transfer and appropriate funding for the acquisition of these 80 acres of real property in Deer Valley from Civic Rancho Meadows LLC be approved.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. President Rosario, Director Corbett,
Aye.
Director Eccles,
Aye.
Director Coffey,
Aye.
Director Lane, Director Wieskamp, Director President Rosario. It's unanimously approved. Director Wasserman. Now it's unanimously approved. Thank you.
Moved and seconded and carried, so thank you very much. And then we have item number 3, Operations Division approval of the Tilden Public Golf Course concession agreement with Touchstone Golf LLC. Tilden Regional Park. Welcome to the Northeast.
Good afternoon, President Rosario, Board of Directors. This is Linda Lee, Business Services Manager. And I'll be presenting the Tilden Golf Course RFP and our staff's recommendation to enter into a new agreement with Touchstone Golf LLC. So for the presentation today, I'll give an overview of the location and background of Tilden Golf, the Tilden Golf Course, and talk about our RFP process, and then move into our recommended proposal from Touchstone Golf. We'll be giving some highlights of their business plan and talking about the terms, the fees, the revenue, and then wrapping up with our recommendation. Here's where the course is located, in case anyone is not familiar, right in the heart of Tilden Park. And here's an up-close view showing the premises. Sometimes it's hard to get an idea of where it is when you're driving around the exterior, but it shows exactly where it is. The golf course was designed by William Parkfeld Jr. He was a very famous golf designer, and it was constructed in 1937 by the Civilian Conservation Corps and Works Progress Administration. It has historical context within Tilden, and you can see some of the beautiful stonework still today in the lower left corner in the parking lot area. It's a 120-acre course, 18 holes, par 70, and it's open every day during daylight hours and has been operated by a lessee or concessionaire for many, many years. It has been a certified, and still is, a certified Audubon Cooperative Sanctuary. That's a program specifically designed for golf courses, where golf courses are meeting different environmental sustainability standards in all aspects of their operations. So not just how they take care of the course itself, but use of water, and use of energy, looking at all aspects. The current lease at Tilden has been the same entity since 1971, and that is currently in month to month. We did have an irrigation system evaluation completed as part of the RFP process, so we could be aware of that information and share it with prospective bidders. And it was determined the system is in good condition. So we went through a request for proposal process as the incumbent concessionaire was at the end of their term. And we announced this in June 2021. We go through our usual process where we have a site visit and invite everyone, potential bidders to come. It's mandatory. Everyone gets the same information at the same time. They have an even playing field. We do a formal interview process. And our goals in this RFP, in looking, thinking about what do we want to see here at Tilden, at the Tilden Golf Course, we're looking for customer service. We want an operator, a concessionaire that will do community building, bring a quality recreation experience, and then also the environmental stewardship, excellent maintenance and revenue generation. So we are asking a lot from this RFP, and I think we have a good proposal to recommend. We're here, we brought it to the Board Operations Committee last month, and we're here today before the full board, November 16th, which is today, and if the board approves, we are looking to potentially make the transition in concessionaires next month in December. Wanted to highlight a little more about the Audubon Cooperative Sanctuary Program. It is already in place, and it's been in place since 2013, and it was a minimum requirement of the RFP. Any bidder would have to continue to maintain this certification. Every 3 years, there's a recertification, and these are all the areas that they look at in the certification: the environmental, wildlife and habitat management, chemical use, water conservation, water quality, and then also outreach and education, so that they're building that into their operation. For the RFP process, we went to our website, we did the legal ad, we posted on social media, we contacted the National Golf Foundation, and we also mailed to directly to six concessionaire operators that work with public agencies. We had 4 entities attend the site visit, and we received 3 proposals. Those are from American Golf, the incumbent, also from Course Code, and then the third, Touchstone Golf, which is our recommended proposal. We do a formal interview process with scoring, so we're really looking at the criteria and who is best meeting that criteria. The Touchstone Golf, they have 17 years of experience in operating golf courses. They over 40 golf courses, and their focus is on public golf operations. They have a big focus on maintenance and preventative maintenance, including trees, which is an important part of the Tilden Golf maintenance. They have experience with food and beverage, capital improvements, programming, and one of their slogans is about is a place to play. And so that is their focus on community building. And one thing which I'll talk about, they are our current concessionaire at Redwood Canyon Golf, and they really work with the home clubs of the course. Tilden has 3 home clubs, Tilden Golf, Tilden Seniors, and Tilden Women Golfers. And so what they've done at other courses, including Redwood Canyon, is they set up an advisory or leadership team where they meet regularly with the home clubs to get to know them, get to understand the community, and then give them updates on the course. And we saw that as a really strong part of their proposal. Steve Parker, the CEO, and Mark Lukeman, the president, are on the Zoom call today as we do have questions later on. Here's talking about some of their other similar locations. Again, really a focus on public golf operations. They recently won an award from the National Golf Foundation as being in the top 100 business involved. And this is not anything based on size or dollars. It's really looking at innovation and new ways to grow the golf business. Another part of their proposal that was strong was that they have the Touchstone Golf Foundation. This is the 501c3 nonprofit that works with the Touchstone Golf LLC. They provide volunteers to assist golfers around the course. They provide education, and they do community outreach and assist local charities. They've raised $1.2 million over the last 8 years for local high school and junior golf programs, cancer and military support organization, and other charities. And they would extend their charitable programs to include children if approved. As emphasized in the RFP, they have a very strong environmental approach in their proposal, so they would absolutely continue the Audubon certification. They will be working on creating a golf course specific manual for Tilden using a model set by the golf course superintendents. And then we'll be working with the IPM program, and we heavily emphasize the district's integrated pest management program requirements in the RFP, and those will be included in the contract as well. And Touchstone was very open and excited to be working on those requirements. Waste reduction is another one we talk a lot about in our concessions, and it's really emphasized here. As with all of our recent concession agreements, we don't allow non-recyclable containers or plastics at all. They have to maintain a recycling program and green waste program, or make arrangements with the park to do so. We're also going to be working with Touchstone on their waste reduction plan. So we'll get all these areas, reducing or eliminating the single-use plastics in the food and beverage service, prohibiting styrofoam products. That's already part of our contracts. And then having the clearly marked containers, doing the education for both the public and the employees of the course. And then they're going to be doing events or rentals, adding that mandatory recycling language into the tournament or rental, so that that message is being passed on to the end users. And then last but not least, looking for those ways to serve the food in a way that minimizes waste of the food itself. This RFP did not have a capital requirement. We did have it as an option. So even though it's not required, Touchstone proposed a very substantial capital investment of their own funds, not to be offset by any rent credit. So it's $800,000 of capital investment, projects that would be completed by December 2023. So not only a substantial size of investment, but a fairly ambitious plan to make some significant changes to the course in a relatively short period of time. The breakdown is here on the screen. One of the areas that can use a nice refresh will be the food and beverage. There's a nice conference room, meeting room there. It's a little dated at this point. Down below here, there's some before and after pictures of what Touchstone has done at other courses. The one on the left is a space called Prune Ridge. You can kind of see it looks like a storage area, and then the after, they transformed it. They call it Ace's Ice House. Very inviting, modern place where you want to go and have a nice food or beverage. And then again, this is another one of their Applewood. The one on picture on the left, really dark, kind of dated, and then bringing that modern look. So they have this experience of how to get this done in a way that can really then make the space more welcoming and inviting and also revenue generating. In terms of the terms, the length, that we are offering a 15-year term with possible 2 5-year extensions. This is in light of the substantial investment of capital in the agreement. This is the current rates. This is how much it costs to play golf at Tilden, and Touchstone has committed to no changes in those rates within the first 12 months, including the senior ticket, which is a very popular ticket. And we hear a lot of feedback about how important and valued that, that rate is. So no changes this year to those rates. There is something called the Players Club, which is a proprietary kind of promotion American Golf has done. And Touchstone will be offering a similar promotional club, but with slightly different terms. But that's not part of the standard fees. That's a promotional program. In terms of revenue, this is the revenue proposal. It's structured as a annual minimum, with a percentage fee over $2 million. So it escalates increasingly over the term of the agreement. When we look at both the minimum of the $300,000 rent with the 20% fee, we'll be looking at about $400,000 a year in rent, increasing over the life of the agreement. In addition to the rent, above and beyond the rent, we are implementing a concession maintenance fund at Tilden Golf. We have not had one in the past. It's our only concession. We didn't have one yet. So we're establishing the concession maintenance fund. This is a great way to set aside some funds to then reinvest in the premises. And that will be an additional 5% of gross receipts above and beyond the rent. So if we look at the total value to the district, combining both rent and CMF, based on projections, we'd be starting around $600,000 a year, and then on up to close to $800,000, hopefully, if its projections continue positively through the end of the term. This is just recaps our recommendation to recommend Touchstone Golf LLC as a concessionaire for initial term of 15 years with possible 2 5-year extensions, 5% for CMF, and a minimum of $300,000 in concession fees. And I'm happy to take any questions. And as I said, we also have representatives from Touchstone Golf here.
I'm wondering if they have programs to introduce young people to golf. Is this something that's been going on at Tilden? Anything that Touchstone is talking about?
Yes, so they have had some limited programs, but this is an area that Touchstone plans on expanding. And if it's okay, I can ask Touchstone to elaborate on maybe some of their youth programs. Is that okay?
Certainly, Steve Harker here, and having been
Speak just a little bit louder, sir.
okay. Certainly, Steve Harker here with Touchstone Golf, and when I started out playing at Tilden Park, there were no junior golf programs, so we are excited to build on what they have there now. They do have a summer program, and they do a few things over the holidays, but we would like to have more of a year-round program. We're also bringing the teachers back in-house. Trish Henze, who is the director of instruction there, will be coming back in-house. We'll be hiring professionals and putting together an extensive program for juniors, beginners, and more advanced players as well. So I'm even going to be seen out there occasionally doing a little teaching myself. And so anyone that needs any help with their game, especially our youth, we'll be there for them.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that I'm overjoyed that Touchstone Golf and Steve Harker will be taking over, hopefully be taking over the Tilden Golf Course. I know from experience the work they've done at Redwood Canyon. It was an incredible undertaking on everybody's part. Everything bad happened that could have happened to Redwood Canyon with floods and everything else in the first couple of years, and they turned that place into a really, really wonderful venue. And so speaking of programs, I know that, you know, Touchstone didn't have anything to do with children at this point. Hopefully they will, but at Redwood Canyon, they have programs for kids all the time. I play there at least once a week, and there's always programs for kids. So I know Steve buys into this program, and it's a feeder stock for golf, and it's great. I just think it's a wonderful thing that's hopefully going to happen. I do, and I would like to comment there and compliment. I don't know if Mark was involved with the negotiations when I was on the operations committee. Boy, those seniors came in, and boy, they demanded that $15 a round at that beautiful golf course. I was amazed, but was that even Mark that deftly just said, "Hey, sure, we can make it work." And that was good. Good negotiation skills, because those guys sure like their $15 a round golf, and I think I'm gonna go up there and play. But anyway, I guess I have one question. So the food service is going to be, are you guys going to take care of that yourself, or is it going to be like a Wedgwood deal down at Redwood Canyon?
So for the food service, and thank you so much, Board Member Wasfie, for the nice comments.
Mr. Lesman, could you get closer to the microphone?
Yes. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Speak just a little bit louder, sir.
Okay. So thank you so much for the nice comments about the impact that we've had at Redwood Canyon. And yes, at Tilden Park, we are planning an extensive rehabilitation, if you will, of the restaurant and the dining space there. And we'll be improving that, and we'll be running the food and beverage operation there ourselves, as we do with many of our golf courses. And we see that as a very important part of the community aspect at Tilden Park, where we've created a place to meet and greet, and for people to enjoy Tilden Park, not just the golfers, but visitors to the park that are coming and that might be visiting the park, and they can come up and get a sandwich and a burger and a cold drink and enjoy the beautiful views from the patio. So that's a big part of our plan, and all part of our looking forward to burnishing Tilden Park's reputation as a community asset.
Great, well, thank you. If I can editorialize for a moment, I like your plans of putting $800,000 into capital improvements. And I saw the before and after pictures. I personally think that dark little lodge atmosphere up at Tilden Golf Course that you have right now, especially when the fog rolls in at night, is a wonderful, wonderful atmosphere. In fact, I think a couple of you folks here, and I spent a couple evenings there. It's a wonderful atmosphere. It won't do too much. But, and also, when we talk about sustainability, I think you can say we don't want to have plastic here, we don't want to have anything here. If you have bottle fillers, I think that really, really helps a lot. I don't know that helps a concession profit line, but bottle fillers really eliminate the need for people bringing bottled water, plastic, if they're full of the bottles and they fill them up. And so that's my editorial line. And also for Park District, I was looking while the presentation is being made. If this golf course started in 1937, if I'm not mistaken, the oldest golf course in California, was built in 1929 in Catalina Island. So we're dealing with a historical place here. And we mentioned the rock walls and all the great work with the CCC and the WPA. I think we've got a lot of opportunities for interpretive panels that I would think Park District would do, and even some recognition, some interpretive work that could be done there, because it is a historic golf course.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. This is actually the third time that I've had the opportunity to hear this, so I appreciate staff and also our two representatives here from Touchstone Golf. I wanted to say how excited I am about this proposal, and I'm particularly excited about the community building and the outreach to youth and the other programs that Touchstone has been involved at other places. And so I'm very excited about you all bringing that to Tilden Park. You answered all my questions about environmental stewardship already, and I feel very comfortable with where you're going with that. I'm excited that you're a place that is, your focus is on public golf operations, and I think that's important. And then, of course, to the willingness to invest so much money in renovating $800,000. And the cafe, I've, since the time that I was a kid, have had many meals in that cafe, and I, while I agree, Dennis, it's a special place, but I definitely think there's a lot that can be done to make it more attractive and more accessible and more inviting while still retaining that character. And so I'm very excited about this proposal and look forward to welcoming you to Tilden Park.
Well, I too want to emphasize the fact that this is a historic park, and you're saying one of the earliest public parks in California?
Golf courses.
Public golf courses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Director Eccles also talked about the character of building. If you are indeed going to do a number of upgrades, I would hope that what you would look at are really traditional look for it, as opposed to what we often call as modern, because there's a lot of history in this park, and sometimes the building doesn't look like as it could. So I hope you'll get some good design people there, and respect the fact that it's 80 years old, and has this tradition of CCC and WTA stonework. And then any place you can put the leaf, of course, I'm interested in that too. So thank you.
I want to say, I think it's one of the top 10 beautiful public golf courses that I've ever seen, and I'm sure they're going to maintain it. And I think the idea of being so involved in the community, I think they proved that in Capture Valley. So I don't see why they can't do the same thing.
Any other comments? Seeing none? Motion. Oh, yeah. Second. A motion by Director Eccles and a second by Director Wasp. Roll call, please.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Coffee.
Aye.
Director Lane.
Aye.
Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
Director Waspy.
Aye.
Director Eccles.
Aye.
Director Corbett. Is she still there? Okay. And President Rosario. He's moved and seconded and carried.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We are extremely excited and look forward to working with all of you and staff and the folks at
Mr.
Tilden.
Harper, we can't hear you, sir.
Oh, sorry. We are extremely excited and looking forward to working with staff and with the East Bay Regional Park District on Tilden Park. It really is a special place, and we couldn't be more excited about moving forward with you.
Yes, thank you all so much. We're just thrilled to be involved with Tilden Park and looking forward to a really bright and successful future with the golf course and the community in the Berkeley area.
Excellent. Okay, that brings us to item number 4. Oh, go ahead, please.
After we give them a few months to get going, I suggest that we make this a site of a field trip next year. I think I'll get you then. Give them a chance to get going, and then we'll take another one.
One year from now, we'll have everybody out to the golf course to see it.
Item 4, Executive Legislative Legal Division, and item A is East Bay Regional Park District Board Redistricting Update. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Rosario, members of the board. Here today to introduce our consultant, Kristen Parks of National Demographics Corporation, to speak to our redistricting updates. Kristen, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen, but I don't have nearly the beautiful park photos and golf course photos that you've been enjoying so far in your meeting. But, you know, I have some numbers and some maps. So what I'm going to do is give you an update on the demographic information from the 2020 census as it pertains to the redistricting process for the district. And I know you've heard some of this information when I presented to you previously, so bear with me. I will try to be fairly quick today. So the role of the board of directors in this process is to ensure that we are complying with all of the procedural requirements. Legally, you must only hold one public hearing prior to the adoption of your new ward map. And you will need to adopt that new ward map before April 17th of 2022. So there's still plenty of time to get through this process. Primarily, we will be looking to you for direction and guidance on boundary lines and what your goals are for the moving of those lines in the sense of which communities, neighborhoods, or areas should be kept within their current ward and which may make sense to move. And my firm, National Demographics, usually presents a couple of options to our clients after we hear any direction that they may have. We will usually prepare a map that simply brings the current boundaries into legal compliance. And I'll talk in a moment about what that means. And then if there's direction or different options for how to bring those boundaries into compliance, we may present different options doing that. After I present draft maps to you, you will have a chance to request revisions, changes, or a different map. So we've built that time into the process as well. And in terms of the legal requirements, this slide makes it look like there's a lot. There's really not. We are just making sure that we're following federal law that says each ward should have more or less equal population so that each director is representing more or less the same number of residents. We're going to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act and take care not to dilute the voting power of any protected classes of voters. Of course, those are African American, Latino, Asian American, and Native American voters. And we will not draw any wards with race being the predominant consideration. California state law says that the board may consider factors including topography, geography, cohesiveness, contiguity, integrity, and compactness of territory. All of those factors are physical features, really, but also the board may consider people through communities of interest. And so that's one area where, as your consultant, I will need to hear from the board on what the communities that you are interested in preserving and not having be divided across ward boundaries, what those communities might be. And of course, we'll also try to minimize making voters move from a ward where they may be expecting to be able to participate in an election in 2022. We want to try to minimize moving them into a ward where they may not have the chance to participate in an election until 2024. To some extent, we will also make sure that we are respecting voters' choices in the sense that we believe that the representatives should be elected by the voters, and that lines moving on a map should not take away a voter's opportunity to elect the representative or re-elect the representative that they had previously elected. And we may wish to preserve the core of the existing wards, as this has been the area that you have been working with and organizing with for many years. So what we're basically looking at here are some very basic federal guidelines. Primarily, I've highlighted the equal population because that is going to be our primary concern. And then really everything else is on the table for you as optional, and we will follow your direction. In terms of communities of interest, this is something that you may consider. This is the people part of things. There are many ways for those communities to be defined. We're not just thinking about cities or towns or things like that, but we might think about where are a lot of our residents who are seniors, where are folks living in multifamily homes, where are families with children at home. Any demographic characteristics that might be helpful to you in identifying communities of interest are things that NDC will be providing on an interactive online map. So your staff has prepared a summary of some of the 2020 demographic changes in the East Bay. And these are, of course, comparing them to 2010, which was the previous decade. And you do see that you are in a growth area of California. So you continue to grow, and you will see that reflected in your district's numbers as well. And in East Bay, there's also a note that the population of Asian Americans has increased, and the population of white residents has decreased. There's also more residents in the 60+ age category. And languages spoken at home are primarily English, but also Spanish and other Asian languages. So what we have to consider legally is the data from the 2020 census. And so your staff went above and beyond in giving you a sense of how this has changed from the past. But in terms of moving forward for the next decade, we are going to focus on this data from 2020. And yes, this census was taken in a pandemic year. There were significant delays in the processing and releasing of the data. And perhaps there also was some undercount, although we do not know systematic analysis of that yet. These are the numbers we will be working with. So what you see for your district here is the total population for the entire district, right? About 2.8 million residents. And then it's broken down by each of your existing wards. And what you'll see on the second and third row here are what we call deviation from ideal. And what that means is when we're complying with that federal requirement that each ward should be relatively equal in population size, that means we're going to be looking for a target population number. And so at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see that target or ideal population size is, of course, the total population of the district divided by the number of wards. So we're looking for each ward to be about 407,000 people, right? So what you see on the second and third rows here are what the current wards, what the difference is between that ideal size and the current population of each ward, or the 2020 population, rather. So the deviations listed that are negative indicate, of course, that those wards have fewer people than the ideal number, and those that have positive deviation numbers have more people than the ideal. So in terms of the math, we do look at a total deviation. That number is highlighted here in yellow 14.76% is our total deviation for the district. I'll show you in a moment how we calculate that. But what I want to point out is in order to bring your current boundaries into compliance with federal law, we want to get that total deviation under 10%. So 10% is the maximum deviation that has been allowed by federal courts. So that's the main impetus here for making any movement to your boundary lines. A lot of my clients say, well, do we have to move our lines? And the answer is, if your total population deviation is greater than 10%, then we do recommend that you make changes to your boundary lines to bring your boundaries into legal compliance. There's also some additional demographic data here. Again, just a snapshot of what is available from the NDC database. But let me tell you how we calculate that, that deviation. So we talked about the ideal district size. That's just the total population of the district divided by the number of wards. But the total deviation is calculated not just by adding up all of each individual ward's deviation, it's actually looking at the largest ward minus the smallest ward's population. So if we take the 2020 population of Ward 7, subtract Ward 4, we get this 60,131 number. That's sort of, you can think of that really as the population, deviation of the entire district, because that's the span from the largest population district or ward to the smallest. And if you take that total deviation number, divide it by what the ideal size is, that 407,000 number, you're going to get the percentage. So that's where the total deviation percentage comes from. I know this is highly technical, but I think it's very important for transparency purposes for me as your consultant to actually show you exactly what these numbers are and where they're coming from, so that you can understand what's driving this process. So in my mind, an easier way to think about this is to think, well, which of these wards may need to shrink their boundaries and which of the wards may need to expand their boundaries. Now, I will caution and say every single ward doesn't need to have their boundaries move. We just need to move enough to get that total deviation into what is called population balance. However, as you can imagine, often when you move one line and one ward, it will have a ripple effect across all of the wards. So this is sort of the starting point here. You can see that on the eastern side, these are the wards that perhaps had more growth, but these are the wards that are the ones that may need to lose some population to the wards on the western side. Again, these changes that are required may represent very, very small movement of boundary lines, given that your district is so large and there are some densely populated areas. So this may not look like any sort of radical change. And again, that 14% deviation is not very far above the legally compliant maximum, but it is far enough above it that we'll need to make some shifts. So here's our timeline. We are going to, of course, as with many things, pause for holidays. But what I do hope to hear is any direction you might want to provide for us today, so that when I come back in the new year with draft maps for you, as I mentioned, I will be drafting the minimal change in order to bring these wards into compliance. But if you have ideas or suggestions or desires for how that should be done, there's plenty of time for you to give that direction to staff. After I present those maps to you in the new year, again, you will have a chance to provide feedback and request revisions, hopefully coming to a consensus around one of the maps, and then holding a public hearing to get any feedback from the public on that map that you wish to adopt, and of course, voting to adopt it before the April 17th deadline. And of course, that means that that ward map will be in place for the November 8th, 2022 election. So looking already ahead to a year from now. The next steps, I sort of just summarized these. And I also just want to give a few more optional steps if you wish to direct staff to perhaps set up a web form where you can just have on your website an easy way for the public to give any feedback they may have on communities of interest within the district or the current ward boundaries. You can also create a redistricting, East Bay Regional Park District email so that the public could submit email feedback. You could reach out or communicate with any of your subcommittees or your park advisory committee to just get another take on this, or perhaps have, some other folks that have a little more time to think through it, as I know you have a very full plate of work. And while you are only required to hold the one public hearing, if you wish, you may schedule additional meetings. I would not suggest scheduling anything before January, but perhaps if you wanted to schedule additional meeting January or February for the public as a way for them to provide feedback, or simply a virtual workshop, or if you wanted to have an additional public hearing after you see the initial maps, all of that is optional. And, just there's sort of the bare minimum here, and that may be what we're able to accomplish very easily, given that it should not be huge changes to your ward boundaries. And ideally, those minimal changes will bring your boundaries into legal compliance. But I want to make sure you have all the options on the table, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you very much. I'm sure this is going to elicit a lot of questions. Questions from the board?
Well, I tried to understand how the, in that top chart that you gave us on page 108, the percentage of deviation was 14.76 when none of the wards were that large. So it's clearly not some sort of an average. But my question on, and I really love this chart. My question on looking at deviations in each of the 7 wards is that if 10% is the amount that you can deviate from, and all of each of these wards is more or less 10%, then why would we need to change boundaries at all?
Yeah, this is a great question. And this is where it does get confusing. And that is because the total deviation.
I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Okay, so the total deviation is not up for the individual wards. So you can have greater than 10% deviation for an individual ward. That is not an issue. What is an issue is the total which is calculated as the difference between the largest ward and the smallest ward. So you have to think of the total that way. I know it's very confusing. We didn't decide this is how it's calculated. This comes through the federal court system.
Kristen, maybe you could wrap up this slide that shows the map on the deviation one more time.
Sure. So what the director was referring to is that each of the individual wards, none of them have a deviation from the ideal of greater than 10%. However, the total is 14.76. And the reason for that is because what we're looking at is the difference between the largest ward, which is Ward 7, and the smallest ward in 2020, which is Ward 4. And so the difference between the largest and the smallest is 14.76% of the ideal size.
So technically, if you just deal with the largest and the smallest, you could fix it.
Yep, that is correct. It is. That's the math of it. Of course, we know that there's more to our wards than just numbers.
Yeah. And then, is there some, when we get draft maps, is there a way to have it a digital interactive process where we can actually change the wards in real time when we see different numbers?
Yes, if you'd like, NDC does offer an online mapping tool for our clients. Again, you would have to direct your staff if that is something that you wish to have. That can be very fun. I would say that I would only recommend that to you if you anticipate members of the public wishing to submit ward maps. Whatever maps the directors wish to have drawn, NDC is prepared to draw for you.
Speaking to the microphone, Director. Well, it's, I think the interactive is something we would like to see. But also, I was wondering if we might be better off, instead of presenting the first draft at a board meeting, better in a workshop session. I don't know, what's the pleasure of the board? Director Wieskamp.
I think we want to have something that's quite interactive among us. It's very hard. I appreciate the statistics. And we got all kinds of statistics about things like ethnicity. How much are we going to think about that? Is there a particular area that we feel is important? I would say in Ward 5, probably most of the growth is in both Dublin and Fremont. Now, I don't know of any other community that's changed that much. And I think it's a factor. It may not be huge, but it's a factor. Certainly, I believe in my ward, Dublin, Pleasanton, and Livermore have to hang together. Then you've got Sunol and Dennis and I with Fremont adjusting back and forth, and that may not be that difficult. I don't know, Dennis, what do you think?
Oh, this piece without a doubt.
Now, once the public is involved, that could blow us all out of the water. So obviously, Fremont is, yeah. Fremont is so large that there's no way we can make that kind of adjustment. But as much as we could do it sort of in community areas, it might help in Fremont to look at that, so that you get some equity between the two wards on ethnicity and so on. Dennis, I totally agree. Somebody help us figure it out.
Yes, thank you. I am having trouble hearing my colleagues in the room. Again, if you all could speak right up to your mics. I have no trouble hearing the consultant or others who are on the computer. That said, I want to make sure I understand what Kristen was saying, because it's wholly different from what I took from the staff report and the presentation of these statistics. And that is that we're not looking at a plus or minus deviation from 407,000 people per individual ward. In fact, what Kristen's suggesting is we're not really focusing on what the final deviation is in any of the wards at all. We're looking entirely at the total deviation derived from subtracting the smallest population from the largest ward's population. Is that all correct?
That is correct for legal compliance. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you completely ignore the individual ward deviations. And of course,
that was a hypothetical to get to what the math is that you're looking at.
Correct. So the way
right.
that it legally works out, right, is that if that total deviation is under the max, then the map is presumptively constitutional.
Again, hypothetically, then we're looking at getting the ward with the least population up to a level where it's we're looking at 14. So we want to bring up that population approximately 5% in order to get the total deviation under 10, or perhaps as a goal of even closer to 5. So I understand that. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the formula. I went into this presentation assuming we had to get each individual ward within plus or minus 5 to 10%. And that's just not true. So I have to think a little differently toward the goal here. Next thought is there's important, very important data simply missing from what's in the hands of the board right now. And that is each of us needs to have the population data per jurisdiction, per city, and per unincorporated towns, so that we know what those small numbers that we're going to be shifting around look like in terms of shifting cities or proportions of cities or otherwise boundaries. We don't have that data here. I have no clue what the current populations are of the 10 cities within my ward, other than what I see on the road signs. Some of those are 10 years old. So we need that ASAP. We also need to know the ethnic diversity of these towns, so that if we're talking about slicing off a hunk of a ward, or looking at what we're adding to another ward, that we know how we're impacting diversity in both what we're subtracting and what we're adding. So I think that's a demographic per unincorporated town and per city is a very important database that we need to think about this for ourselves. I'm also a bit frustrated. Director Corbett spoke at the last presentation that you folks made at NBC, and I spoke of it as well in terms of statisticians aren't going to know the communities of interest of these towns and these wards, and yet we're talking about drafting maps already and presenting them in a month and a half. I haven't been contacted by anyone at NDC. I don't know if my colleagues have. I've asked Government Affairs when I'm going to be contacted to discuss these community of interest. I haven't gotten a response. There's important information that you don't know from looking at a map.
Let me show you.
7 is the Contra Costa finish. All right.
Let me show you the interactive review map that is already available, and I'll go ahead and drop this link into the chat so that you can see a lot of that information that you are asking for. Oh, chat is disabled. Okay. I'll make sure that staff shares this with you if they have not already. But so this map, you cannot adjust boundary lines, okay? However, you can use this map to drill down to exactly what the director was asking for. So seeing the current boundaries here, and then on the layers side, not only can you look at the parkland, the visitor centers, the trails, you can also look at the citizen voting age population percentages. So you can look at where are the Asian American voters, as well as the other data points that I was referencing. You can drill this all the way down. And I think I need to add a button up here so that you are able to click on each census block so that you can see that summarized. Right now, we can also look at the cities and town boundaries. So those show up here in red. You can also take the current wards and, make them a little more transparent so that you can see other data, or you could turn that off, right? If you just want to look at, for instance, the citizen voting age population data here, and then the legend, of course, is a heat map. So what you're looking at is the percentage in each geographic area of citizen voting age population that identifies as Asian. So from purple being 0 to 25%, all the way to 75 to 100%. So I hope that this provides some more of that context for you. I will say that NDC does not normally correspond directly with elected officials privately, because that is perceived by members of the public as working, in smoke-filled rooms. And for transparency purposes, we usually conduct all of these discussions in public meetings so that they can be preserved in the public record until the next redistricting cycle. So this is a unique process. The rules change usually every decade as new court cases work through the system. And it is highly technical, as you referenced, and there is a lot of data out there that can be very overwhelming for people who are not doing this all day, every day, all day and all night, as I'm doing it right now.
And Kristen, if I could jump in on that, my understanding is that today you stand ready to receive input from our board on communities of interest, as well as in our February discussion to have a deeper dive into communities of interest as well.
Okay, I was cut off and I wasn't really finished.
Go ahead, Director Coffey.
All right. Lisa, I think you just said something about board member input. The board member input that was described the last time NDC made a presentation was to them, despite what Kristen just said. And I'm not quite sure what staff has indicated, but how is there going to be some sort of engagement plan with the goal of identifying communities of interest if the people drawing the map haven't a clue what that process is or how it plays out or what its outcomes are?
Director Coffey, I apologize for any confusion. The goal was for today's conversation to be the board's input on communities of interest, and again at the February meeting. So in terms of input for NDC to consider as they're drafting the map looking out into February, today's a great day to highlight some of your input. And then when Kristen comes back in February, we'll be using the maps as a tool, but continuing that dialogue around communities of interest in the public meeting at that time.
I'm sorry, this is kind of a bizarre take on this. They're going to be drafting maps with no input on communities of interest?
You are welcome to provide input today in this public forum.
Well, I emailed Eric a week or two ago and told him I had some materials on the background of my ward and the communities of interest, and I wasn't told to bring them today.
So, President Rosario, if I may, I'm wondering if it would be of interest to the board for us to have, instead of, having this meeting, which it sounds like we're probably not ready to dig deep into these areas substantively, that if we were to schedule a special meeting in January, so that way we would have sufficient time for you all to then look at the maps, look at the communities that you want to bring up to the consultant in that public meeting, and then should be sent off and then come back in February with some of the proposed maps, if that would work for the board. And the consultant, sorry, I'm seeing Lisa, maybe nodding, and Kristen's nodding. Okay, great.
So I'm going to come back to this, and that is does the consultant then, looking just at mathematics, draw draft maps without any input on communities of interest in the existing wards? Is that what's going on?
Coffee, were you able to hear General Manager Lambert's comments?
I didn't hear whoever just spoke.
Colin, can you hear me? This is Sabrina.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you hear my suggestion about coming back in a public meeting, a special meeting in January?
Yes,
So
and I
you
was
all are able to
drilling
provide
down.
input?
I was drilling down on whether there would be draft maps done at that point without any input on the question of communities of interest in existing wards.
Got it. So I don't believe so. I think what I was suggesting is that we, in that January meeting, we would receive the input around the communities. The consultant would then go back and work on the maps based on that input and come back to the planned February meeting with those draft maps.
Okay, that would be awesome, because I could
Okay.
come to that meeting with the material that I've already offered Eric. And so I would find that a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that Colin brought that up, because one of the things that, there are ways you can look at this. One is all quantitative, right? And the other is qualitative, to make it simple. So there are reasons why the current ward boundaries are what they are. And it's not all racial or language communities. I think Christian pointed out last time that one kind of community is geographic community. And I'm just wondering if it would be helpful for someone, it could be a board member, if you could perhaps talk to Dave Collins about 10 years ago, to look at what the current wards represent in terms of communities of interest. And not the numbers, but other things. And one thing would be Ward 7 being a shoreline ward, and that being a community of interest, which is a valid one. Another is perhaps trying to keep wards entirely inside one county, which is the case for me. And what that means is that there is that community of interest. So, Kelly has commented that, oh, gee, it ought to be Tri-Valley, but the Tri-Valley has its own communities of interest. For example, my area, Saramone, Danville, and Contra Costa, participates in Tri-Valley activities, transportation activities, economic activities. The mayors go to Washington together, but the Alameda County cities also work with the cities to the west, and Saramone and Danville look at ourselves as part of central Contra Costa County. So what I would like to figure out, and I think it's some of, I don't know everything that Director Coffey has put together, but I'd like to figure out how we could at least address our current boards and their communities of interest as we see them. Because some are like these is two county with some communities of interest that are different from one to another. And there are pros and cons in all of these things. So how should we approach the qualitative things?
Yes.
It's fun, the interesting things we get to do. I really believe the three communities in the valley, we should hang together there. I'm wondering how you approach this idea of diversity. Fremont has a very large Asian population. I don't think it's all in one area. These days, I think it's expanded. And so I think you might need to think between Dennis and I, how do you look at that important one? That would be one of the most important issues. We're used to working across, even though there's a distance between the valley and Fremont and Newark. Newark seems to get along with everything. They'll go either way, but I think without a big problem. But I think it's important, since there is such a large Asian population, that we pay attention to that. And if there's some way we can figure it out, and I'm not sure what that challenge is, I think Dennis agrees, it would be nice to make sure we're sharing that population. And I like the idea of calling it a workshop. Having some maps that we really look at with some way of changing it around, listening to the public. That's one thing great about the system we've got now. People who really want to participate can call and say, hey, I think X should be there and Y should be there. And we can take it down and see what works. So thank you, General Manager, for coming up with a workshop in January. Another meeting. Wow.
The new president's gonna be busy.
The new year.
Yeah, I think this is a good start, and the January meeting will give us an opportunity to look at our perspective. Director Eccles.
Yeah, I thank you, as being GM member for that suggestion. I think it's a good one. The only thing I wanted to add was I wanted to make sure that we could give direction to staff to have our consultant create interactive maps, because I think that's going to be important. I'm not sure if we're not supposed to communicate with the consultant how they could develop the maps that, if we want to play around and to look at things ourselves. And it also gives the public the opportunity to play with those maps, and like folks are doing with the legislative maps right now. I think it's good for any member of the public that wants to be involved.
And, the only other comment is that structurally, I think Ward 4 is at a disadvantage because it's basically landlocked. So that's going to be an interesting exercise too. Fish don't vote. Okay, so I think we've got a plan. Are there any public comments on this?
Yes, President Rosario. Looks like Kelly Abram has his hands up. Mr. Abram, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. The Alameda County Board of Supervisors has a redistricting process going on right now. We've been following that for over a year and dug deep into those laws. Hundreds of people have offered input there or comments. 10 years ago, they only got about 20 people per meeting. If you look at the Contra Costa County supervisorial map, if you know any supervisors there, and I suspect that some of you do, It looks pretty fair, actually. I mean, anybody with their supervisorial, districts are divided up. It looks pretty logical to me. But the laws, they focus on people. The park district likes to think about parks, but parks are empty space, and they have to be an afterthought that is going to be squeezed around how the people are. And what you haven't seen yet is a population density map. I've pulled those off the internet, and they're very interesting. You see that population density is a whole line of population goes along the bay. And if you go along those ridge lines that we all walk to the top of the mountains, those are empty. Nobody lives there. So, but in this thing, we went all day today, and I didn't hear about the Fair Maps Act. The Fair Maps Act, maybe you guys think that you don't have to, you can ignore it, but I would suggest that you do like the East Bay Mud has done, and at least bow to it, and suggest that it's the best practices, and pay some due respect to the Fair Maps Act. Some of you might know a guy named Rob Bonta. He wrote that thing a couple of years ago, and it's pretty good. And it does apply to the county supervisors. Most of the growth, by the way, in Alameda County, Emeryville 30%, Dublin 55%. Livermore, Pleasanton, your growth was anemic, along with Fremont. Union City, only about 1%, by the way. The Tri-Valley includes San Ramon and Danville. The unity of the Tri-Valley is a sacred bond. And I sent you a letter written by a former mayor of one of the cities there that talks about that. The Tri-Cities includes Fremont, Union City, and Newark. Right now, we've got Fremont and Newark combined with Livermore. That's unnatural. It's unholy. The 14% deviation is huge. I've never heard of any government agency anywhere with that kind of deviation. That's outrageous. It's amazing how you could get so out of whack. And you're going to have to get down closer to 5% or whatever. East Bay Mud has an isolated enclave in San Ramon. That is, and it's cut off from the rest of the ward in Castro Valley, and it's structurally weak and possibly illegal. I hope you don't never do anything like that. And they're openly declaring that their wards are going to be anchored at the current residences of the current directors, so that those precincts are fixed. And that is the most unfair and strange thing I've ever heard. But it might not be illegal, but it certainly is unfair and strange. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no more speakers. President John.
So we are a park district, and I would point out that in past redistricting, if it is possible, people try to have parks inside the wards. And if one ward has 3 parks and another one has 20, that's a problem with the community of interest. And so in the past, that's always been something that's been brought up, and in an effort to have not necessarily the equal number, but more than 2, let's say. So if you're going to be talking about qualitative things, having parks of if at all possible inside ward boundaries is an important thing for us that is probably unique to park districts.
Thank you. We will hear more on this. And then now we are at item 5, General Manager.
Today, we are going to go ahead and hear a presentation from Pete DeQuincy. I think he's here. Great. A year in review of lifeguard services.
Did you save it on the P drive? Okay.
Let's take a 5-minute break.
We're taking a 5-minute break. Everybody, please unstop your video.
within the whole Bay Area that provided recreational swimming. Most agencies went the opposite direction and really focused on providing the program. So let's say junior guards, lap swimming, floor aerobics, different types of activities, master swimming. And we went the opposite route. We went with the direction of how do we serve. Medicals. Again, very happy with where we were and what we could provide within that short period of time. So, recreational swimming, again, what we focused on. We tried to make sure that we have our beaches open and they were safe and they were adequately staffed. You'll see a picture here. This is one's at Del Val on the left, and on the right, that's Camp Royal. And we started working with Camp Royal and UCCR back in 2019, along with the Taylor Family Foundation. They chose not to participate this year again because of COVID restrictions. So we work closely with that vendor, which is UCCR, in providing services. Again, we have the staff, we have the ability to service them and provide them service along with the public, and did it, and made it happen. And again, I really want to pride ourselves. If you look back at our numbers, all the employees, which are the seasonal lifeguards that we had, none of them caught COVID. We had great protocols established. None of the park operations staff that worked with the lifeguards, none of them caught COVID. We worked together to make that facilities, all the facilities safe. Let's stay on recreational swimming real quick, just to bring up the numbers. I had a great talk with the reservation supervisor. One of the things that we worked on was the implementation of a reservation. That was a big deal because historically we have never done that. And Shannon Punt, bless her, she worked closely with park operations and with us on how do we find that sweet spot, specifically, how do we get our public out of a line, standing close to each other, breathing close to each other, waiting to get in. And so with the reservation system, we kind of fiddled around specifically early on Memorial Day weekend, and we got it to more of a sweet spot as the season progressed. These were the numbers that she gave us specifically. She said that for that season that we had 58,174 available slots for reservation. 36,536 were used, which is amazing. 28,000 of those were residents and 7,700 were non-residents. So there was a great embracing of this idea of reservation. We found that there were some challenges with it, but what we did find is it really alleviated the congestion and chaos that we've seen on holidays, which is something that here at the Park District in public safety and park operations, we've had a long history and a long relationship with. So we're really happy about that. So let's keep going. All right, programming. Even with the ability to provide recreational swimming and the limited staffing, we still provided some programming. Our programming numbers were reduced, but a lot of that had to do with the fact that we had to have COVID-19 restrictions, and we really had to focus on the ratios that were the county was providing at that time for camps and programming. So we still did it. We still had a swim lesson program. We still had a junior lifeguard program, junior lifeguard aid, and a junior cadet program. Again, the numbers were not strong as I would like to have. However, we're still in a pandemic. I'm just going to say that. So keeping that in mind. Let's keep going. This is one area that we really focused on because, again, as 2021 came into effect, there was concern that we would not have a season. And so the idea was, could we, as a lifeguard service, continue to remain relevant? And one of the directions that we decided to go, because we've heard such an exceptional job from INR, was really developing a virtual classroom presentation. So that's the direction we went. Historically, we've gone to the classrooms, we physically have been there, we've provided opportunities for kids to learn about water safety. But could we do it from a virtual setting? And so I want to say early in the year, we started to work on that. And we developed 5 safety topics, and we were successful in providing 98 presentations before the season started. So we were pretty happy about that. Again, it was something that we've never done before. We thought we'd branch out. And what we found, one of the 2 that were the most successful of our 5 topics was stopping the spread. Again, there was a lot of requests for information on how to do that. And then what to do if you're lost, which I found very fascinating. Again, we're still advocating for those in classroom presentations. And I want to preface that we did a very limited offering of those. When I talk about that, we focused on very specific zip codes that were not being serviced by the Park District. There was a great presentation, I'd probably say about 10 months back, that, I can't remember her name, she was just that good. Anyone? Lisa provided that that was really about where we were successful and where surveys were done and where surveys were not selected. And there was a really big blind spot specifically north of San Leandro in the South Oakland region. And we focused on that area. We really wanted to be able to get in there some way, because again, as the infectious disease officer here at the Park District, that is also an area where we have a high rate of unvaccinated public. So there was something going on there. One, they weren't learning about the Park District, and 2, they weren't getting vaccinated. Could we figure out a way to actually get in there and start to work with those communities? 98 of those, were a good majority of them were from those zip codes. But again, it was challenging, very challenging, and it still is challenging. So I'll continue to bring that up as I move forward. All right, for 2021, we still work with the community. We still have a strong relationship with the city of Pittsburgh. We partnered with them. We still partnered with the city San Leandro High School, Eden ROP, and we work closely with the fire department and with park operations in classes that we can continue to provide for our employees. So we did a lot of work. And again, we have some pictures of there. Again, it's still happening. We've changed some of the parameters of how to do it successfully and safely. But this is one that I will talk about a little bit more in depth. We're still in a pandemic, and so the lifeguard services still continue until recently when we dissolved the EOC. We were still working closely with park operations, with finance management services on really making sure that the supplies were out there, that we were addressing the building entries, that the COVID prevention plans were being followed and monitored. And my staff is still doing that on a quarterly basis since the beginning of December of last year. So we'll be doing it again. We'll continue to do it. We'll probably be doing it all through 2022. And again, we have a great record. I don't know how many times I've told this in tailgate safety meetings, but at this point, the number of positives that we have here at the Park District is 41. Okay? 41 out of almost 20 months, which is unheard of. That is a great number. And a lot of it had to do with the collaboration of all the departments that I talked about. We worked together. The priority was making sure our employees were safe, and we continue to keep them safe. We work closely with risk, with HR, we work with operations, we work with finance and management services. Again, we couldn't have done it without everyone. This was a team effort to prioritize that we kept people safe. So, and again, we're still doing that. I know that maybe there hasn't been talk about it, but we're going to probably move from pandemic to endemic. And what are we going to do? How we maintain those things? All right. This is some of the harder questions about how we're looking at the future. this season we had 2 facilities closed. The one on the left is Lake Anza, and it has not been open for 2 seasons now. And then the one on the right is Shadow Cliffs. This picture that we took of Shadow Cliffs is after that torrential storm where they brought water in, talking with the park supervisor, the water rose 4 inches. So there's going to be some long-term issues that we will, in lifeguard service, have to acknowledge and address and work collaboratively with the other departments here. What are we going to do? What do we need to do to remain relevant? And again, I think the only way that we're going to get through these challenges is us working together. It's not going to be Pete and the team in lifeguard service. This is all of us, all hands on deck. So I'll keep you posted. All right, this is the other big one that we are looking at is recruitment and retention. Again, some of the questions have been brought up. We did have a staff shortage. There is a national lifeguard shortage across this country, okay? So even though we were understaffed, there's still every agency. I came from a meeting of the California Water Safety Coalition, and we were talking specifically about recruitment and lifeguards. It was brought up to all of our attention that currently, as of today, there are 400 openings, 400 agencies within the state of California in a non-summer season looking for lifeguards right now, which really begs the question, what are we going to do? How should we move forward? And how are we going to keep the young members of our community engaged and wanting to serve the community? I think that's going to be the big question. Again, I don't believe it's something that we're going to be able to do alone. I think it's going to go with a lot of collaboration and a lot of hard work. I'd be more than happy to discuss it with all of you if you have questions. But I think that what we need to think about, and this is just me, I'll throw it out there. I think that we need to reframe of how we do business at times. I think this idea of a seasonal employee worked in the past, but I think that we need to have more engagement, to have a longer term relationship with, or partnership or collaboration with certain communities. The idea that a job fair is going to always capture the attention of a 16-year-old, handing them a pen, here's a flyer, a good handshake. I don't know if that's going to work. And so we as an agency might have to do some of that heavy lifting and committing to longer and different types of relationships and engagement. So, any questions?
I guess addressing what you were just talking about. It seems to me you sound like you've got some ideas, and I think it's going to be very worthwhile to explore. It almost may have to be some training program outside of just being a lifeguard. College credit, I don't know, whatever you got, I'm sure be willing to listen.
You know, I think there's some great things that are happening here at the Park District. I want to compliment Jim in operations with his outreach within the community colleges. I think that's one avenue. I think there is also the need for us to have a relationship specifically with schools and communities within the Park District that don't receive services. I know that I took a lot of hard thinking in regards to the recent diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a lot of going on there that I think that we could benefit from, but it requires us to sit down and start talking to those communities. I know that my staff has reached out to 8 of the schools just within the Oakland city confines. And we had a sit down talk specifically with the principals or the superintendents or the vice principals. And a lot of it comes to access, opportunities, and really them understanding that we exist. One of the superintendents specifically, it was the Oakland Military Institute, which is close to the border over in West Oakland. He basically said 3/4 of his kids have never been to a park, let alone to the shoreline that is less than a mile away. He has access to transportation, and he has access to a pool. But I didn't have the heart to tell him that I don't currently have access to instructors. Just because of how we're currently framed as a seasonal operation, we're not an all year round operation. And we really should have that hard talk as a group. Not me making that choice, it's as a group effort if we want to go down that direction. But they want to work and they want opportunities. I think we have to be able to go to their doorstep and talk to them, as opposed to hoping they show up, because they're not. They just simply aren't. Hopefully that answers.
Well, I think it's great. I just want to compliment all of you on how you diversify yourself in this very difficult time. It was useful, and I'm sure it helped everybody involved feel better about their job and everything. Thank you.
I will, Director. If anything, it reminds me of what it takes for us to move forward as a group. A lot of people that I've personally at times had challenges with, we all came together, we let go of our egos, and we made it work. And I can't thank all the hard work that came from those groups. And I'm going to say them again. It was park operations, it was finance and management services, it was with the ASD, it was with public safety and itself, all of them. Did I miss someone? Because risk and legal did a great job as well. Again, they guided us to make sure everything was safe.
Thank you, Peter. I just want to thank you and your staff. It's been a rough couple of years, I know. Not anything like our services. I mean, the fact that our lakes are all dying, you can't have recreation swimming there, then we need to deal with that. But your staff, I'm amazed with what they did, and they just reprogrammed themselves to become COVID warriors and get out the PPE, do all the work that they did, train people on how to use the PPE, train people how to protect themselves, and your record is incredible, and you specifically. I always found it pretty amazing when it was pretty hectic and pretty weird with the, well, everywhere, but especially with the labor task force, or joint labor management task force, that group that we meet with, and DNI were members, and there was lots of stuff, thoughts of what was going on in the world at that time. But you were the facts guy, and it was pretty amazing because we always kept reiterating that we've got the protective equipment, we're doing everything we can possible, we're doing it safely, and we don't have any COVID cases, or 41 for 20 months with 1,000 employees. It was an amazing job, and I think you were the rudder that kept us from not total panic, but you made it real. You brought it down really well. It's a terrible, terrible pandemic that we controlled pretty much. And I think.
No, thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. I think the biggest thing that's the takeaway on that is I was not a successful leader without the support of my team. If I did not have them beneath me, pushing me up to be successful and pushing me to be a stronger leader, I could not have done it without them. I can't thank the lifeguard service staff because my success is only because of theirs and their dedication to the park district. So, thank you.
I don't see anything else, but I just wanted to acknowledge the work of the lifeguard services during COVID. Incredible turnaround and assistance to the park district and keeping everyone in the park district safe. Tremendous work, and then your programs going virtual, just like the Naturals had to do 180. Your programs definitely delivered as well. And as far as recruitment, I'm so glad you gave this presentation because I've been thinking about this for a while now, and the city of Oakland's been closing pools like crazy. I think the Fremont pool, the only pool in West Oakland, closed a couple of years ago, and I was thinking, when you think about expanding our services, why can't we subsidize some of those pools and do programs in some of those pools to keep them open and to reach those populations? And I was thinking, well, I was going to ask you specifically, the closure of Roberts Pool for a year, you know, have you looked at approaching the city of Oakland? Because I know the Live Oak Pool, that's an Olympic-sized pool. I used to swim there. And it's hardly ever used other than school activities and a master's program. And talk about easy access to a population. And I just think these facilities are underutilized. And I think we have the ability to find funds to support programs there, support those inner city kids and programs. And I would support somehow outreaching and maybe utilizing those existing facilities that aren't being used to their fullest.
President Rosario, thank you. Is that a question or just a comment? Or
Comment? Question for you is, you know, if you had the permanent staff, would you be able to? Is that something that's feasible? To you, does it make sense?
So President Rosario, I actually want to sing Pete's praises on this because he approached me earlier this year and said, hey, because of because of the closure of our lakes and the number of lifeguards that we have, he had actually already initiated some conversation with the city, knowing that they had a lifeguard shortage, but they had the facilities. We got very close to entering into something, and then Pete had to unfortunately say, hey, actually, we actually don't have enough lifeguards on our own here based off of the number of patrons that we were seeing, the number of facilities that we had. So we made that difficult decision to tell Oakland, actually, great idea, press pause on it. We need to keep the lifeguards for ourselves this year. But I think it's definitely something that we could explore. And I want to credit Pete for initiating that actually on his own. So.
That's been on the back of my mind for a long time. As I noticed pools being closed and then there's that dearth of lifeguards because communities aren't swimming as much as they. So, and Carol,
thank you. Carol Baker, District Council. I'm really asking the board to indulge me as a short timer with letting me speak. I just wanted to thank Pete for all he's done in the last 2 years, almost 2 years with the pandemic. But they were also critical players in responding to the wildfire smoke situation in 2020. I've lost track. In 2020, I got a call from Cal OSHA and they said that the KN95s weren't sufficient. We had to get N95s out to our park staff. He mobilized in less than 12 hours. They were at the park at 5 in.the morning with lifeguard services, and by the end of the day had delivered N95s throughout the park district. And have just really been instrumental in our COVID prevention plan as well. I did want to say, as I think this is the 11th or 12th year with no drownings in our guarded facilities, and swimming and teaching kids how to swim. It really is a public health issue. It's in the top 5 causes of death for children under 18. And it disproportionately affects minorities. And so it's always been near and dear to my heart since I've been at the Park District that we really reach out to those communities, and it's a matter of public health. And thank you.
any other comments?
Find some more lifeguards.
Yes.
And find some water.
Absolutely. We need to find more water, and again, I think some of the recommendations that I'm hearing from President Rosario about partnering with agencies that have bodies of water or pools that are unutilized because of the staffing shortage, I think is a possibility. as GM Lambert had pointed out, again, it's going to be a longer talk and a longer relationship of how do we get in and support that community and empower them to train that community to provide lifeguards for their own facilities. And that's going to be a longer talk, and that's a longer commitment than going to a job fair or doing a 2-week swim clinic. It's really about how do we empower them so that they appreciate what they have and we support them to continue to move forward. So.
I mean, if it takes some permanent lifeguards, I think we should put that on the table, the future budget. So, I applaud your efforts, and hopefully we can see our way into the Sanders communities with bodies of water that we can utilize and help. So thank you very much.
Director Coffey has his hand.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate and congratulate Pete on the success of the program through these difficult times. I wanted to apologize, President Rosario and my colleagues. It's 5:30 here and I have a commitment I have to keep at this point, and we'll have to drop out. I'll submit my attendance in writing to Yolanda.
Thank you for
Thank you.
on your vacation.
All right, thank you for your time. If there's no other questions. Yeah, sure.
Is it worthwhile to think of sort of a slash, lifeguard slash, some other title to try to entice people into getting a different picture of the people we hire?
You know, I think that's a great question. I know that we are pushing the idea that lifeguards are anyone. We've hired seniors, we try to have a full spectrum of diversity and equity in regards to our lifeguards. We've hired DACA students that were lifeguards with us. We've hired, I think this last year was one of our most diverse academies that we've ever had. However, we still need to drill down because I think the next part that we're seeing is it's an economic issue. A lot of the places that we do the recruitment, specifically high schools, those high schools are on a free and reduced lunch program between 7 to 19%. And the communities that we're really trying to address are on a free and reduced lunch program of 70 to 99%. And so it's a very different landscape of what they're looking for and what they need. Some of the easier high schools, it's a quick fix because they already have the mind frame of getting a job because that's going to help attribute to their resume in regards to going to school. Whereas the more challenging high schools are looking at how do we reduce gun violence? How do we reduce truancy? How do we reduce all of these challenges that the kids are facing and provide them the skills so that they can be successful? And I think the Park District has that ability to do that. I've seen it before. I've seen us change people's lives in dramatic ways. I think it's just us coming together as a team together to make that decision as opposed to, I will say this firsthand, I've worked in silos before and made stuff happen, but I don't believe that's the way that we should continue necessarily. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Okay, now this is to item number 6, board and staff reports and actions taken by other jurisdictions.
Just one, thank you, President Rosario. Just one quick update in the interest of time. The details are in your packet around the Union City Planning Commission approving a new site for the nonprofit ag operation of Big Deep Farms, which is also our partner. The new location is going to be at the corner of Mission Boulevard and May Road. You can read the details in the packet. And that's it.
Much. Farms seems to be expanding, huh? Good to see. And then any announcements from closed session?
There are no announcements from closed session.
Thank you. And now we are at our favorite. Let's go with board comments. I'll start with Director Echols.
Thank you. Thank you, President Rosario. I'm going to be quick because I need to go pick up my daughter, but I'll just go through this really fast. So on November 3rd, I attended part of the 2021 stewardship seminar and wanted to thank staff for that. It was always very informative and interesting. On November 4th, we hosted Assemblymember Bucky Wicks at Millie Knox Park, and I really want to thank all of the staff that was involved. Eric Keeler and his team put this together, and GM Landis was there, Chief Kiley, Colin Gallagher, Coach Eric, and Lisa Baldinger, and Dr. Son, and everybody was just really great. And Colin in particular did a wonderful job of explaining everything that was going on with the dead and dying trees and the work that the Park District has been doing to mitigate that and to prevent and prevent fire by getting rid of all of this fuel. And it was really very informative and very interesting. So I just wanted to thank staff for that. On the November 8th and 9th, I had some meetings with some constituent members about Albany Beach and specifically some safety issues that have come up, and wanted to thank staff who met with me on the 10th, both Lisa Gorgian and Chris Barton, regarding how we can work together to address some of these issues. So thank you for that. I look forward to discussing that further and looking at your ideas. And then finally, on the 15th, I attended the Point Lactate working group. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I did not attend the last board meeting, but so I'll talk about a little bit of things I did before. On the 21st, I attended a legislative team and GM meeting where we talked about plans for the legislative affairs group and where we're going to go in the future. It was a great productive meeting. On the 26th, I attended the Hayward Shoreline public workshop to discuss the future of the Hayward Shoreline. It was a great presentation by staff and some input from some folks. What the plans were for the Hayward Shoreline. On the 28th and 29th, I attended the California Association of Recreation Park Districts Board Retreat in Sacramento. We did our strategic plan and talked about future planning. On October 30th, I attended a new event for the Park District. It was called Trunk or Treat. And I don't know if anybody knows about that unless you have young kids. It's instead of walking around in the dark streets, knocking on doors, you have members of the community come out and open up the trunks of their vehicles and decorate them and hand out candy to kids in one specific area. This seemed to work out really well. It was a good ask, or in my opinion, it was a good ask. And then first off, I should thank Jim O'Connor, Shannon Punt, and Joey Murdoch, because it was one of those deals where a community member, great community member, good person, reminded me of how I hadn't served the Fairview community as much as I should, and darn, she's right. But it was a way hit or miss. You know, the deal is if you want to get a special use permit in the Park District, it should be 45 to 60 days. The turnaround on this was like 2 weeks. So I really thank you guys for letting that happen. I was a little concerned about what was going to happen when we offered candy to everybody in the park and what would occur. It was wonderful. It was great. It was I was totally off base, and then the park staff enjoyed it. They did an excellent job. There were probably 15 or 20 cars, which included our police department who decorated a police vehicle, our volunteer patrol folks with Carl and some other volunteers with Heather who decorated the volunteer safety patrol van. We had fire department personnel there, decorate the fire truck, and community members. Even Orlando Sanitary District, my dear colleagues, got together. It was very festive. Everybody enjoyed it. Everybody was safe. Everybody loved the venue of the park. So thank you all very much, staff members, and Jim, please share that with your staff. They really turned around really quickly on that deal. And then I attended the Tim Gordon Memorial at Tilden Park. And that was touching and wonderful. And I guess finally, I'd like to say goodbye to Mark Taylor. He slipped away, didn't he? So, yeah. I wish we didn't have COVID because he deserves to be carried out on so many shoulders, all of our shoulders. He was a great guy and a wonderful, one-of-a-kind park person who, geez, I think he stayed in the same park for 40 years and then just turned that thing from literally a hunting preserve into the beautiful park it is now. So, happy trails, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, interesting to hear how you give everybody candy in the park and send them off on a sugar high, I'm sure. Everybody's flying around Halloween. It's just really something to watch. So I have a few board comments. I did drop in stewardship seminar just briefly and reading about monarchs doing some different behavior in Pacific Grove and some other areas has really been very interesting to me. I hope they'll hang out at our locations as well. I went to the mayor's conference, Contra Costa County, and listened to their report from the Racial Justice Task Force, which Contra Costa Board of Supervisors had set up some time ago. It was really very interesting. They focus a lot on incarceration for juveniles. Enjoyed the field trip that we went to Sunol and the new Tyler staging and Chenard. That was a really wonderful day and a reminder of how much I miss seeing all of these folks. Then I sat in on the executive committee informally where they talked about the naming policy, which I guess is old now. I didn't realize it's like 2007 or something like that. And so it is time to take another look at it. I thought it had some really good elements and then others that definitely need to be updated. And thank you to Eric and Lisa for meeting with me to talk about some other legislative issues. In addition, I did meet with the East Bay Leadership Council Executive Director. Had a breakfast meeting to talk about some of the future for that council and whether they're going to stay doing Zoom meetings and what they'll do in person. It is a 63-member board. And I said I thought it was a little large, but Kristen was going around and talking to different board members on several issues that are very interesting. And then Armistice Day, I made it to our American Legion Hall where they had a series of vets programs for several days. And they had a focus on Port Chicago in which they had a cooperative display with the National Park Service. And also talked about minorities and diversity inside the military, looking at Japanese American for the program on 442nd and internment camps and Polish, Philippine, and Navajo code walkers. It was a very interesting display that took a lot of time. I was really proud of everybody doing that. And then I appreciate having a call about a Finley Road property, which is in Tapsahara Valley, and which would help facilitate our getting access to Northern Territory. So that was interesting as well. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought the field trip had its moments when maybe it wasn't pleasurable, but it's always good to get feedback from the public and be helpful in making decisions but it's so nice to see it finally underway. I think it's going to be popular, but it's a great asset for Sonoma. I think people are really going to enjoy it. And a new place where I think the equestrians can come. And I think that's very helpful. On November 10th, Alameda County Special Districts Association Card made a great presentation. And I suggested that we have one of our joint meetings and we go on a tour of all their facilities. It was really a good meeting. On the 13th, I had a conversation with Ben Yee, who's now on the Planning Commission, who's actually the chair in Fremont, and we talked about Mission Peak. Say about that at this moment. And then on the 15th, I had another meeting, and this was with our staff, and we talked about Mission Peak. It's been a Mission Peak week, I guess you have to say. And coming up on Thursday, the 18th, at the LAFCO meeting, and we're going to have an update on our study that we have commissioned on the Measure D effects on agriculture in the valley. Remember, one of the things was to preserve and help it expand. And so this should be a really interesting one, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to let you know what's going on there. And I personally would like an update from the committee that's been looking at mountain bike trails. What's a good approach to it? How do we go about it? All I can tell you is more and more people are doing it, including the youth. We like to be active. And we want everybody to be safe. And it may be separate trails are the way to go. Or at least try it and see if it works. That's it. Thank you.
And it's great to be back. Like it's good and bad.
Yes, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, and on 11/3, I attended the stewardship seminar, and as usual, I call it the greatest show about work. It's so good, and I always learn so much. And the breadth of the work that Park District and stewardship is doing is just amazing. And I still think there should be probably good for that one. And then on 11/4, I attended or made a presentation to the Lake Merritt Breakfast Club about our UN Global Citizens Award. I gave that presentation to them. They're amazed that we don't just do parks, but the things that go on parks. They were very appreciative and amazed that we do. And it was a great presentation too. And then enjoying the tour. I'm really looking forward to Denison. That was a big tour. And I'm really looking forward to opening up that landing. That's going to be amazing. 2000. That's going to be a great gift to the public. And then on the 8th, had a meeting with the legislative department. No. Yeah, that was with Eric and yeah, that was a good meeting. And then 11/10, attended an event with Director Echols for Chantel for the mayor event. And then on the 11th, the Lake Merritt Breakfast Club, Nick from the Oakland Zoo gave a presentation. Well, they're in good hands over there. Nick is really personable. He really knows the zoo and the constituents, and they're really doing some great programs there. And right now, you go there to see the bears. They're sleepy. Not quite in hibernation, but they're sleepy. But they did do some. They lost their tigers to the age, so they're looking for some tigers. Yeah, and then on the 12th, I attended the Chicago Space and Science Center inauguration. What a great event! They actually had the first classes there. the school there, and then it was attended by Barbara Lee, the Avanta, state education, so it was, well attended, and, congratulations to everybody. It was a great, great one. And then on the 15th, having a few board meetings, Sabrina, and the executive team, and so, and we are here today. Before we, I just want to make a few acknowledgements. During our time in between board meetings, we wanted to acknowledge Dia de los Muertos. The Fruitvale District had its annual and great celebration. I hope people appreciate that day. And then also we celebrated Veterans Day, and I really appreciate that we have to count today. The fee schedule that we're accepting in the state Veterans Pass. So, and I want to acknowledge this Native American Heritage Month, and then also I wanted to give a big shout out to our own Yolanda Burial Night on her award from African American Chamber of Commerce. And if I could just read from the Tracy Press, she was honored with the African American Chamber of Commerce of San Joaquin County on Friday. And she was one of 8 honorees, including 4 adults and 4 high school students, who received the award for community excellence at the formal dinner dance event. And the award was originally intended to be presented last year, but the event was postponed with COVID. But you are amazing. Your accomplishments in the community include serving as president of the Tracy African American Association, director of the Youth Department of People of Christ Missionary Baptist Church, and a member of the NAACP and African American Chamber of Commerce. And she sits on the Multicultural Advisory Committee for Congressman Josh Carter. Wow. And when do you sleep? So congratulations, well deserved. Thank you very much. It's amazing what our folks do in and around the world. And then we give a shout out to another retiree, Hector Del Rio, and I think that he's been here for my entire career. He's always been one of those guys. And sorry to see him go, but he definitely did his service, and we appreciate it. And then I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of Peter Koch. He died in October after a stroke. He moved to Oregon, and he was an architect. Yeah, and he had a hand in a lot of projects, in partnership. His legacy is everywhere as well. Our condolences to his family. And then lastly, I'd like to close in honor of Board Supervisor Will Chan, who died in a tragic accident in Alameda. And we have a moment of silence, and then we can close. You will join me. Thank you very much, and we will see you in December 7th. December 7th, that is our evening meeting.
That is our evening meeting, correct?
Yeah. So be advised, and that is a very important meeting for the public, I think, because it is the first hearing for the budget. So